I love a sedan, and I feel like you're gonna be hearing that more and more from enthusiasts because this body style is becoming less and less common. They're just making fewer of them. I actually think the sedan might be destined to be the next station wagon, but this one is far from on its way out. This is distinctly modern day, and we know that because it's fully electric. That's a propulsion method that outside of the 1890s to 1910s really didn't become commonplace until 2010 and later. So if you're surprised to hear that there are older EVs, you might want to check out a place like the Lars Anderson Auto Museum, which I am standing next to today. They've got a few fabulous examples, including a beautiful 1908 Bailey Electric that brought home a trophy from Pebble Beach in 2021. They graciously let us film here today, so thank you to Lars Anderson. Definitely check it out. Now, this is the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and it's got such singular styling. I mean, I definitely see elements of other cars, beautiful other cars, but Hyundai has somehow pieced them together into something totally unique and definitely different from anything else you see on the road. I actually spent a week with one last summer, and I happened to have a visit to a bunch of family members that weekend. They all were saying things like, wow, you must be really high up in your local press organization to get a press car like this. And I said, guys, it's a Hyundai, like it's making the rounds, right? But I can see where they're coming from because there are a lot of sort of exotic elements. I mean, the headlights kind of look like a Porsche Taycan. From the side, we get a lot of swoop, almost like a first-gen Mercedes CLS. This is a super aerodynamic shape, and it's kind of funny, if you listen to enthusiast podcasts, there's been a lot of chatter lately about how EVs can kind of afford to flout aerodynamics completely. If you picture the Hummer EV, that's just like a massive rolling brick that gets by just fine because it has an equally massive battery pack. This is not doing that. This is a very slippery shape, super low coefficient of drag, 0.21, and of course, the flush door handles are not hurting at all with that. Now, believe it or not, this color is called Gravity Gold. To me, it really reads more silver. Thankfully, completely avoiding geriatric champagne territory, so that's great. All LED lighting is standard, so headlights, DRLs, and taillights. And then at the back, especially this rear quarter angle, I really feel like I see a little bit of the Porsche 911, that super iconic shape. So not a bad thing. Inside though, very different, so let's check that out. We have a pretty minimalist interior here, which is not uncommon for EVs. That kind of seems to be the modern way. Personally, I find it a little cold, but I've also never really liked millennial gray or new construction, so that might just be a me problem. One thing I do love is this Morse code H on the steering wheel instead of the old italic H in the oval. I like that this is so simple, and I like that it's kind of like a little secret message where you have to be in the know to understand what's going on with those 4 dots there. Another minimalist touch here, we don't have any buttons going on here in the door. This is really just one giant handle I can use to swing the door closed. A lot of the buttons I'd expect to find there are right down here on the dash, which is nice for sort of decluttering. I find it a little annoying if I'm trying to adjust my mirrors. I have to lean forward to switch to the left or the right mirror, and then I have to sort of lean back to see, is this lined up with where I want it to be when I'm driving? Because I'm not driving like this, right? So maybe I just have short arms. For me, this is not great ergonomically, but that's kind of a minor complaint. And you know, if I owned this car, I'd have it set and then I wouldn't change it. I also happen to have memory on this top trim, so wouldn't have to really worry about that at all. Other than that, I feel like this dash kind of has a bit of a mission control look. We've got this winged shape. It reminds me of a Hewlett-Packard desktop computer that my parents had in, I don't know, like 2002, especially with all this dark gray. And that was really trying to look kind of modern and tech forward and futuristic then. This is sort of a similar vibe, so I think it might be missing the mark a little bit on looking modern now, 23 years later. Aside from that though, the cabin feels pretty light and airy. A lot of that is because of this light gray color that I have for the seats. And we'll notice it's got this accent trim that's blue fading to yellow. We can't change that. That's just what the light gray comes with. So We can call this synthetic leather, we can call this vegan leather, depending on how we're trying to spin it or sell it, but it is not real leather. And I don't think I would mistake it for real leather, but I also don't hate it. I think it, functionality-wise, it's doing the job, as long as I don't think about the fact that this is a $45,000 car. Because if I start to think about that, then I start to wonder, should it have real leather? If I'm not focused on the price tag, I don't mind this at all. I like that it's light, and I like that it could wipe off easily. It's a little funny how narrow this center console is, because this is a mid-size sedan. This is not a small car. I'm used to having a little bit more space in between the passenger and the driver, and a little bit more space here. This just looks very, very narrow. But we've got our tandem cup holders, wireless charging pad, and then a little storage thing here. And I do like the shelf down here for a purse. I think that's pretty nice. Sunroof also helps to open things up a little bit. I've got that on this top trim. So overall, kind of a light and airy, lounge-ish feeling up front. So we've got more headroom front and rear than the BMW i4, slightly less than the Polestar 2. Legroom is about what you'd expect from a mid-size sedan. In fact, it's exactly on par with the Honda Accord up front, just a little bit less back here. And I do like that we've got our own vents back here, our own USB-C charging ports. So this back seat is pretty well equipped, except it does not have any access to the sunroof. So I noticed on Hyundai's website, they keep calling that a wide sunroof, and I think that's because it is not panoramic. So we're just gonna call it wide instead. That's our other selling point, right? It's not especially wide, it's like a normal sunroof. Now, I have seen some other reviewers comment on the quantity of hard plastic, and again, I'm not wild about this dark gray, but overall, I'm not feeling like, oh, there's too much plastic in this car. I think they're kind of pulling it off. This H-Tex is working fine. I don't love that real leather is literally not even available on the top trim, but I think we're doing okay in terms of materials here. In terms of storage space, we're a little bit light. The frunk has only a 0.5 cubic foot, and then the trunk has 11.2 cubic feet, so definitely not huge. The base trim of the Ioniq 6 is the SE with standard range, so that's going to get you 240 miles of range with rear-wheel drive. So that is a newer configuration, actually. Hyundai introduced it after the rest of the lineup, presumably just to lower the overall base price and be able to say, oh, this is a sub 40K car, right? Now, if you want the most range, you are going to want to look at the step-up SE trim with the longer range, which is 340 miles. So that's a difference, $4,950. But of course, it's a one-time payment, or you're financing it, which is great. That will get you an additional 100 miles between every single charge. So for me, somebody like me who I'm a renter, I don't have an EV charger at home, that would totally be worth it. And honestly, even if I did have an EV charger at home, I still think it would be worth it, just being able to go longer between charges. Even though most of the driving that I do is around town, most of my weekend trips tend to be within 100 or 150 miles from home. I do have 3 or 4 trips a year where I'm going like 300 miles one way, and I just would love the peace of mind of that 340 mile range. That's basically full tank of gas territory, right? So that's just like setting out in an internal combustion vehicle. The one difference being, of course, that nobody ever says, ooh, don't fill your gas tank up all the way because it's not good for the longevity of the vehicle, but that's another conversation. That 342 number, that comes from the step-up SE trim with rear-wheel drive. If you want to upgrade that to all-wheel drive, you're down to 316 miles of range, and then if you want to bump up to the SEL or Limited, higher trims, you're looking at 291 miles of range with rear-wheel drive, 270 with all-wheel drive. So your most efficient configuration is definitely going to be a lower trim. But if you really want the features that come from a higher trim, we've covered a few of them and we'll look at some others shortly. What you could do is buy a higher trim and swap out the wheels. I think you would have no trouble finding someone who wants to buy your 20-inchers, and frankly, you're gonna get a better ride anyway on the 18s, plus more range. Now, speaking of ride, this is a bit stiff, but it's also, a lot of that is down to the large wheels. I really just don't need 20-inch rims on this thing. I think the suspension is good and it makes for good handling. I will say, you can tell sometimes that this car is heavy. Specifically, going downhill, it just gets a lot of momentum, and you're kind of aware that, like, if you're not riding the brakes a little bit, it would be happy to roll, right? But other than that, this is really pretty pleasant to drive. It's, you know, it's low to the ground, low center of gravity with that big battery pack. Good handling, steering feels nice, no complaints. I've been happy with the one pedal drive, regen, braking feel, so everything is pretty good. That's, you know, you're not gonna mistake it for a sports car, but you can get kind of a sporty experience with this just because of that EV nature, that instant torque delivery. It's really fun being first in line at a light in this car because you don't have to speed to get that zip. You can just get right up to the speed limit real quick, faster than anybody else, and then cruise. It's great. The biggest update for 2025 is that we now have a standard head-up display on the top trim. Now, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are still wired. That feels a little bit at odds with this minimalist interior to me. Like, I have to have cords running through it in order to get smartphone projection. Seems a little bit weird, but Bose premium audio system is standard on the top trim, so I have that, and I've been using it because there's kind of a lot of wind noise in this car, especially on the highway. I actually thought that the windows were cracked open, and I keep going like this to make sure that they're not. Just getting a lot of wind noise, so you can cover that with the radio. So we've got our infotainment screen up here. We do still have physical controls for volume, media, and a few climate controls. Not seat heating though, which I don't love. You have to find this, and then you can manage your heated seats, heated steering wheel, ventilated seats on this top trim. This is a little bit hard to pinpoint while driving, so I have had to have my husband tap that so that I could change these things. It's a little bit annoying. You can also access it here. Now, I will say that I have always kind of liked the layout of Hyundai's infotainment, this menu. It's pretty nice, pretty intuitive. I like the little icons. One of my favorite things is the custom ambient lighting. So we've got all these things. It's dual level in this particular vehicle. So I can change my upper to, I like an aqua. Okay, there it goes. And then maybe I'll set my lower at like a coral. I think that's a nice combo. Now, don't be misled. Highway Driving Assist 1 is standard, but Highway Driving Assist 2 starts on the SEL trim. So HDA 1 combines adaptive cruise control and lane centering assist. It does have a stop and go feature, and it can keep you in the lane and keep you a safe distance from the vehicle ahead, but it does not have a machine learning capability, and it cannot change lanes for you like HDA 2 can. Now, I mentioned safe distance from the vehicle ahead. This is one of my favorite Hyundai Kia driver assistance features. It's called Leading Vehicle Departure Alert. And what it does is if you're at a stoplight, car in front of you pulls away and you don't react in a certain amount of time, it'll ding at you, which is really cool. Not saying that I'm not paying attention, but you know a lot of people around you are not. They're looking at their phones or whatever, zoning out. And if everybody were driving a Hyundai with that feature, I feel like traffic would move along a lot faster. Base price for the 2025 Hyundai Ioniq 6 is $38,945 with destination. Competitors include vehicles like the Polestar 2, Tesla Model 3, and BMW i4. I realize that is not alphabetical order, but perhaps you see what I did there. Now, I have personally always been a little bit of a BMW fan, but I gotta say, out of this list, this might be the prettiest one. The Polestar is kind of more muscular looking, BMW maybe more Teutonic. Tesla Model 3 really just looks like a Tesla and maybe a little bit like a catfish as well, but this looks like something completely different. Pricing-wise, the Polestar 2 starts right around $65,000, Tesla Model 3 around $45,000. Do not be misled by Tesla's website because their pricing information is a little bit confusing. And then the BMW i4 starts a little under $60,000. So the Ioniq 6 is $40,000 for a car with cloth seats. Kind of seems expensive until you look at that list of competitors, and then that really puts it into context. The one we've seen today, stickers for $56,860. That does include destination as well as this gold or white gold color. If you're shopping for an EV, there are tons of options out there, seemingly more and more every day, and at CarGurus, we strive to cover them all. When you're ready to do your shopping, head over to CarGurus.com to take advantage of our huge inventory, helpful deal ratings, and real-time pricing trends. But before you go, please subscribe to this channel.